Welcome back to another episode of Seacoast Stories, a podcast about the businesses, people, newsmakers that make the Seacoast an American hidden gem. I am joined today by someone who is not from the Seacoast. The first time we venture out of the Seacoast for this show, but I promise it is for very good reason. As we enter the holiday season and I get nostalgic, I think about old friends from my life, old memories, and one person who is near and dear to a past life of mine working in combat sports is today's guest, Eric Jackman. Eric is currently the executive producer at Uncrowned, which is a website that is in partnership with Yahoo Sports. He was also a social media director at Vox Media, was a social media manager at ESPN, where I first met him and crossed paths with him and worked with him in the trenches. And he's also the host on Thursdays of a show, which I watch every Thursday. He co-hosted along with one of my very good friends, Connor Burks. It's called Boys in the Back. And that is on the Uncrowned or the Ariel Helwani Show YouTube channel. Eric, that's quite a lengthy resume. I'm so excited to talk to you today about all things social media, marketing, which is something that the Seacoast people are very fascinated by. So thank you for joining me.
No, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be the first non-Seacoast guest. Yeah. Like you, I get nostalgic for these talks. As you're like, hey, could you come on? I was thinking about the last time we spoke, where we were at in life, how many different things are going on, and now kind of where I've come since. Many big changes. Yeah. As you said, I've bounced around a little bit, but all for good reason. Places that I really wanted to work, and now I'm fortunate to partner with Ariel Helwani and a lot of my same people who I was working with at Vox on the MMA Hour now for Uncrowned and Yahoo Sports.
It's been an annual tradition for us, which I haven't even really done by purpose. It's just how it's happened. 21 and 22, 23, and now 2024, we kind of have a November, December, end of the year social media episode. We talk about the trends, and then we talk about also what's to come. So I'm very excited to talk to you. You were actually, Eric, the most interviewed person in my repertoire. So you now proudly hold that crown.
I am honored once again. I don't know what I did to earn this distinction. Maybe it's just the level of the conversations that we have. But I always am excited to talk to you. So I'm thankful to be on and really appreciate it.
Before we talk social media, let me first ask you, have you ever been to New Hampshire or Maine?
I have not. It's kind of like a weak excuse as somebody who's like a Northeasterner. I probably should have been, but I really have stayed like tri-state. Like I really haven't ventured up Northeast as much as I would like. I'll be honest, when I go on vacation, I tend to go warm climate, right? Like when I have some time to get away, I tend to go, okay, I'm going straight to Hawaii. And when I say warm climate, I don't mean just like, a nice like summer day. I'm talking like, I want to be in the tropics. I want to be like on a beach somewhere with a Mai Tai. But it is on my bucket list, and it is something that I believe my wife would really, really enjoy and want to do. So maybe now that you're there, that's my kick in the butt to make it happen.
It's very kid-friendly up here. Many great places in New Hampshire and Maine. You have 3 children who I'm sure are dying to get out. What do you think of when you hear New Hampshire? What comes to mind?
Admittedly, I do think of the cold and I do think of snow. Like I think of, but like idyllic. I don't want to say that as like it's like frozen prison box. I'm thinking like idyllic snow. Like I'm thinking like fresh snow. You're trudging through, but like a very like positive vibe. I will say I'm somebody who like I know that there's a thing where when it's white, gloomy, snowy, there's this like phenomenon, the sensation of people feeling like they can escape it. I actually like that. Like the reason I'm in New York as opposed to like a warmer climate is because I love seasons. I love winter. I love snow. And so admittedly though, when I do think of that, I think of like water and snow.
Well, we'll get you up to New Hampshire or Maine at some point, and I'll show you a heck of a good time. Let's talk social media. First, big picture before we go granular platform by platform.
Sure.
So we last spoke on my previous podcast, the link to which is in today's show notes, about the state of social media in 2023. So I want to just ask you, big picture, what have been the biggest changes in social media now as we sit here talking in November of 24 versus November 23 when we last sat down with each other?
When we were talking about it at that point, the purchase of the acquisition of X by Elon Musk was fresher. and what Elon Musk was doing on the platform was not as firmly established. There was also a real feeling that Elon was concerned about removing bots and verifying users and wanting it to be an authentic experience. I would say fast forward to now 2024, I don't know how much the bot problem has been solved. And I would argue that the verification system that has been put in place on X is a little bit flimsy. It has allowed people to like surface comments created by people who are potentially harmful and really looking to not have engaging conversation. So the principles that Elon Musk espoused when he first took over, I'm not sure how firmly established they are. I will say the one thing he did kind of stick to was quote unquote free speech, right? Free speech was a huge part of what his platform was when he came in and acquired X. And the forum has been opened, right? There is limited moderation. And the way that moderation happens is via community notes. If somebody says something that is untrue, the community responds, or deemed to be untrue by the community responds, and there's a notation of that. And that seems to be the method of moderation. There is little beyond that. It seems to be kind of open season for people to express their ideas. He presented that he wanted to be that like town hall open forum. That has kind of remained true, actually. That has been the thing that he has delivered on. The removal of trolls, bots, those types of things, people who are not looking to have actual conversation, I would say that one kind of fell by the wayside. X is the one I'd say has had the biggest developments, and that's why I led with X and focused on X. Not only because of what I talked about in terms of the promises and then the delivery upon the promises, or the lack of delivery upon the promises, but also just the influence, right? Like obviously we just had an election, and President-elect Donald Trump, I think, owes a great deal to social media. Having Elon Musk as somebody who's now in his cabinet, but at the time a supporter, a vocal supporter, when initially he said he was not going to support one candidate or another, and then ended up endorsing Trump. There's also kind of, as Trump's campaign was forming and people were talking about like who was responsible and people to thank, we're talking about the Joe Rogans of the world, the Aiden Rosses, the influencers were a major part of kind of what happened there. Comedians and podcasters in that space. And so the way that those clips get distributed is across social media. The way that these people gain their audience is across social media. And so it was a crucial part of the 2024 election. I imagine it will be a crucial part of 2028 election and any other election moving forward. That platform is still very powerful. We've kind of seen an exodus of certain people, especially I would imagine the left-leaning people who are feeling like they're in an echo chamber of right-wing ideology, to Blue Sky. I believe just like 2 days ago they passed 20 million users, which was a platform that existed for quite a while. Jack Dorsey, after leaving Twitter, formed it, but it really didn't have a lot of traction. Threads was ahead of it, and now they have surpassed Threads. And so we're seeing the shift of balance amongst some of these platforms, but I would say that X is the one that had the most kind of movement in the time since we last spoke.
One more question, because this is something that I am proud of working in podcasting. We saw Kamala Harris go on Call Her Daddy. We saw Joe Rogan we saw Donald Trump on Joe Rogan and the Nelk Boys. They use podcasts a lot, especially in the crucial weeks leading up to the election, which for me, as someone who's worked in podcasting for a few years, was just really cool to see that this thing that has been the center of my life for so many years, but is still not, as influentially perhaps we thought, like as CNN's and the Fox News, is to see them play such a pivotal role in the election, and that these candidates were going to podcasts to reach the masses and to reach people that they otherwise were not reaching, I thought was so cool. And so for someone like you who has worked in this industry even longer than I have, you've been working on podcasts since before they were mainstream. You've been working on live stream YouTube shows since before they were mainstream. How cool was it for you to see just what a massive role they played in all this?
Yeah, like you, I've been in the podcast space for quite a while, the show space. It was more than like cool or not cool. I thought of it as just fascinating. It seems to be a turning point. It seems to be a turning point where podcasts and influencers have as much influence as mainstream media. There's been a real turn from only trusting mainstream media to now trusting other sources. Now, I would caution with that, there needs to be a verification, right? If podcasts are going to be your news source, you want to make sure that you're trusting the right podcasts. You want to be making sure that they are doing their due diligence and verifying the information that you're getting. And so now there is an expectation and responsibility that now comes to that podcasting space. Whereas before it was more pure entertainment, right? It was more just, this is where you get your empty calories. To your point, right? Now it feels like there is prominence. Now it feels like there is expectation. Now it feels like there is responsibility. And so it's a drastic shift, but it's both exciting and scary, right? Because this is happening very quickly. And at the same time, the requirements of mainstream news media is different than the requirements on podcasting. Previously, in our era and years before, you turn on the mic, you turn on the camera, and you can say whatever you want. And if you find the audience, so there is a fear that I have that if everything shifts to that, where is the verification coming from? Where is the truth coming from? But at the same time, it would be ignorant to ignore what has happened here in terms of that. The impact that Joe Rogan has as a cultural figure, and especially to sway young men and voters, and not just young men, anybody out there who is a consumer of his product, is massive. There are many others like him to a lesser extent. He's probably the most prominent and the biggest, but it will be ignorant to ignore that shift and what is happening here. And the podcast, it is no longer like podcasts are little brothers to radio, television, other media. It is a different vehicle altogether, but a very powerful one, as we saw this year.
Yes, podcasts and social media played a huge role in it. Now let's talk social media. There's a bunch of platforms out there. For today's purposes, I want to focus on kind of the big five, which are especially crucial for here on the Seacoast. We're all about small business, and we just drove Starbucks out of downtown Portsmouth because the local coffee shops, we have a bunch of them. Starbucks was like, these Portsmouth people, they love their local coffee. Starbucks has no place here. So we've got a lot of small businesses who are trying to do a lot of things on social media, but they also maybe don't have as many resources as you do at ESPN, Vox Media, Yahoo Sports, people who are strapped for time, number of people who can work, and also financial resources as well. So for today's conversation, I want to talk about how we can best maximize our content, our time spent on these platforms to ultimately drive profits, attention, business, etc. So 5 platforms: X, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. I'll let you choose, Eric. Which platform are you most passionate about?
I gave the same answer last year, and I will give the answer this year. It's TikTok. It's always going to be TikTok. TikTok is the platform that I think has the best algorithm in terms of what you are looking for, you will find, and the most stickiness in terms of keeping people engaged on the platform. And so it also has, you're talking about potentially utilizing it as a small business. You can make very niche content on TikTok, and that's what's so great about it. The algorithm will find, if you are somebody looking for something, you will find it. And if you are somebody trying to target people, you will be able to have them find you. And so that's what I do think is so powerful about TikTok at the moment, is that you can be in a niche. If your small business serves XYZ people, there are ways to geo-target, there are ways to topic target, and you will be able to kind of find that audience. Again, not everybody becomes huge overnight. Not everybody becomes a celebrity or an influencer or your business blows up. But even think about like somebody like Keith Lee. Keith Lee is a great example. And if you're not familiar, Keith Lee is a food reviewer who basically kind of established himself on TikTok. Before that, he was in our world. He was in me and Troy's world. He was an MMA fighter. He fought for the second most prominent promotion called Bellator, the first being the UFC. And was kind of, successful, but not ultimately a superstar, and got released by the promotion and started reviewing food on TikTok. That was it. It was just food reviews. He had no additional resources. He had no additional support behind him. He was not one of the biggest stars in MMA. He was just a mid-level fighter who found a niche by reviewing food on TikTok. People started to discover that content, and then he became a huge celebrity. If you are a foodie, you know Keith Lee. If you are somebody who is in the community, you know Keith Lee. And so it is a very powerful platform for stuff like that. You will not. I doubt that anybody who listening to this becomes Keith Lee. If they do, great. Like, let me know. I would love for you to message me in 5 years and be like, I actually did it. But there are small gains that can be made, and it has such a powerful algorithm and such a powerful targeting system that if you are serving that platform, especially with content that doesn't have to be, the great thing about TikTok is the content also doesn't have to be about your business. It can be about things tangentially related to your business. If you are a healthy restaurant, you could be talking about general health, or you could be talking about healthy foods, some that you serve at the restaurant, a little tag on the end, and some not. But that type of content is going to spread wider and find its home. And so I love that platform in particular. It's very sticky. I will admit I'm addicted to it. I use it quite a bit. I'm more of a lurker than a poster. But that's kind of the one for me. And it continues to be.
Now, just overall, what is the goal? Because with I mean, all of these platforms, we all have short attention spans. That's the name of the game, is trying to figure out how to crack that code. But TikTok maybe more so than anything. What is the goal? Is it just to drive awareness? You're not necessarily trying to drive direct conversions and product purchases. Are you just trying to get people to know that your thing exists?
Yeah, those two things can exist at the same time, but I would say at least initially when you're kind of trying to build that, it's that awareness, it's that engagement, it's that top of funnel. You want to bring people into the tent. You want to show them that you have engaging content, and then you can start to sell. Then once you get further down the funnel, that's when you can actually start to sell. In addition, TikTok has a platform for creators to sell directly to consumers on their platform. And so there's ways that you can also directly monetize. But I would say for any social media platform, but TikTok's as good as any, you really want to start with the engagement. You really want to start with making sure that people recognize this is Troy's content, or this is this restaurant's content, or this is this gym's content, and really feel like they have a connection with it and engagement with it and want to interact with it. Then you start the actual monetization of that. Then you start the business end of that. Those two things can happen at the same time, but usually you want to get a little more scale before you start doing that.
And by engagement, you mean the liking, the leaving the heart, the commenting, the sharing to people that you also are friends with. What do you think is the most important form of engagement? Does any one hold more weight than the other?
I would say comments hold more weight. For one, a lot of the platforms prioritize them. Actually, sorry, shares hold more weight. Shares are the number one. If somebody is taking your content and sending it to somebody else, now you've got the direct view or pass along to them, but you've also got an endorsement, because it's one thing to like a post, you're endorsing that, but now you're saying, I like this so much that I'm now sharing it. So I would focus on things that is shareable. Things that are shareable are going to go further, just naturally. You think of how that works. This is a whole way back in the day, and you might be even too young for this, email chain letters. That's how they existed. It was, you do this thing, it passes along, passes to the next person, and now everybody finds it. That is the number one metric, I would say, is make sure that you're creating content that's shareable. That is on some platforms retweet, right? On other platforms reshare. But if you directly share it with your friends, if it gets into their text message group chat, that's where it's really hitting the hardest.
Now, what do you think about, and there's probably a lot of crossover between TikTok and Instagram, because Instagram has prioritized videos so much and it's kind of become a copycat, although I'm sure there are some subtle differences. So a lot of this may apply. On commenting, I've seen a lot recently, comment this and I'll DM you this. Like, how effective are things like that? And is there, it feels, because like I see as someone who works in this and knows the tricks, like I know what you're trying to do here. It feels a bit yucky to me, but is that just what you have to do?
You don't have to, but that is how you game the system, right? That is how, if you're somebody who's looking for the shortest path to what you're after, if you're somebody who's trying to shortcut that, that's what you're going to do. You're going to try to game the system, and you're going to try to get that engagement at any cost. So if you're like, here, comment here and I'll send you this, you're incentivizing. And, while it is clear that you're gaming the system, there's nothing wrong with it ultimately. That is just how the nature of business is. It's all transactional. What I would say is a stronger foundation is building that genuine engagement. When you're building that engagement, because that person who does that comment for that thing that you're describing, they're not probably going to do that again. They do it the one time and then they're gone. But if you can build an actual authentic fan base, they might comment on 2 posts. They might comment on 5 posts. They might comment on every post. And so the more authentic you can be, and I kind of hate that word, even though it's the best word that I can say, because everybody talks about organic, optimize, authentic, all these things that just have become buzzwords, but there is a foundation in it. There is a truth to it that when you have an audience that is with you, it's different than when you're just building an audience based on those transactional things. But sometimes you do have to game the system. Sometimes you are looking for that, and sometimes it works as well.
You mentioned earlier a term that caught my attention, geo-targeting, which is probably something that is really relevant to people here because these towns won't mean anything to you. But someone who's in Kittery, Maine wants to reach someone who's in York, Maine. The Kittery Yoga Studio wants someone in York to come to their yoga studio. So how can you geo-target appropriately to drive business people from other towns?
There's the top level, the easiest, which is just like you can tag locations in apps, right? On Instagram, you can tag your location. On TikTok, you can tag your location. If people are searching for that, they will very easily be able to find that. Hey, was this person at this restaurant? Was this person in this town, this city, this location? Surface level, top level, that's the easiest. There's a level under that, which is what you're doing. You are making a geographic content funnel. You are creating Seacoast stories. You are creating something that is most relevant for this area and hoping that the people in this area will find that, relate to that, engage with that, consume that. And it sounds like we had a little bit of a conversation. It sounds like that is successful. It sounds like by doing that, you have found success in a way that when you're targeting a mass market, you may not be able to, because these people that are listening to this, these people that are consuming your content because of where you're located and what you're talking about and the issues and topics that are really relevant to them, they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be more actual fans. They're not going to just give you that passive like. They may want to interact with you and talk with you and court you. Hey, come check out what we're doing over here in this town so you could highlight it. And so there's that top level, just easy stuff you could be doing. But then there's really like targeting the content to that geographic region or that niche specific interest or whatever that thing is that you're really trying to focus in on, making your content tailored to it.
On the subject of just like I said, the Seacoast, it skews older population. So some businesses who are strapped for resources might say, TikTok's the young people platform. That's not even necessarily my clientele. Should I even be on TikTok? So what's your philosophy? Because all these social media apps are free. It's not like you're paying for the marketing. Should just a closet rule just be everywhere where there's attention, where people are, or should, if you're especially strapped for time, maybe TikTok's just not for you?
We talked about this last time, and my position remains exactly the same, which is use the platforms that are actually going to be beneficial to you. You don't have to be on every platform. If your goal is just to be ubiquitous on every platform, most likely, and especially if you're strapped for time and resources, you're not going to be serving those platforms properly. So it's much better if you choose one or a few and can truly serve that audience and can truly create those engaging pieces of content and drive that conversation there, than if you're spread too thin and not really serving any of them in particular. When it relates to, as the example that you used, somebody who's an older audience, I'd say two things. One, there is a platform that skews older, and that's Facebook. So I would suggest maybe using that platform because the content on there might be reaching those people who are already on that platform, right? There's nothing you can do if you're on TikTok and the audience that you have is actually on Facebook. Then TikTok's not going to work for you. So you probably want to be on Facebook. But what I would say in addition to that at a higher level is, what about their children? And what about their grandchildren? And what about the audience that could make those recommendations, right? What if you're serving an audience that is the grandchildren of these older people, and they say, Grandma, you really got to get to this restaurant. Now you've hacked the system. You found a way that maybe you can directly talk to them on Facebook, but you can actually indirectly talk to them on TikTok. Again, though, that strategy is not going to work every time, and that might be few and far between. That might be a very specific example. I think you really just have to test some of these things and try it. I'm never opposed. I don't think you have to have a fully formed vision of how everything's going to go on each platform. You don't have to go, I have this perfectly crafted vision for TikTok, and then you go to it. For one, if it doesn't work, then you're going to feel like you failed. And you didn't. You just really tried something and it didn't work, and now you have some feedback. And for two, if that does not work, you don't have to like destroy you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't have to get off that platform permanently now. You can try something new. So I don't think you have to come to every platform with this fully formed, like, this is the execution that I'm going to do. Some of it is just about knowing where the audience is, knowing what kind of content they're seeking, putting it out there and hoping that the feedback is what it is. As an example, like Joe Rogan, right? We just talked about how powerful he is and how he was able to sway an election, right? In a certain way. Now, I don't know if we remove Joe Rogan, does Donald Trump become president-elect or not? Is it Kamala? We don't know the answer, but we know that he had a significant impact. Not fast forward, rewind a decade ago, he was making podcasts for very niche audiences, making podcasts that were speaking strictly to like MMA and like comedy focused people, and not getting the viewership that he has, not signing these multi-$100 million deals with Spotify. It started with the niche, and he was able to develop the audience that way. And so these things, A, don't happen overnight, but B, don't necessarily end where they started. And so you don't have to have this like end goal. You don't have to have this fully formed idea. Start with what you can do now, which is that focusing on the niche, focusing on the interests that you're specifically serving, and trying to make sure that the audience can find you there, being available for that.
Now, the age-old questions, this is for every platform, but on TikTok specifically, what are your thoughts in 2024 going into 25 about time of day to post, how many times of day to post, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I don't think that there's a specific number, but I would say consistency is important. You don't want to be putting out too much content where people start to tune you out and start to think that it's just noise. Now, if you're creating engaging content, most of the time there's no such thing as too much, right? Because people are seeking that, people want that. But at least to start, as people are getting used to what content you're putting out and understanding more of your cadence and your rhythm, you just want to be consistent. You just want to, if it's, hey, we're going to post every Friday at this time, or we're going to post every Saturday, once a week's fine. You start with that. But you should tailor it to what you're doing. If it's a daily series, let's say you come up with, hey, I want to do a daily series on healthy lifestyle tips because I'm a restaurant that serves smoothies that are focused on health. You can figure out ways to kind of find that cadence. Just be consistent with it. The last thing you want to do is start getting into that and then disappear or blow everything at once. You're just over serving, super serving, and nobody's engaging with it. So just find what that beat and rhythm that you can actually deliver on is, and get people used to that.
Now, this is the fourth year that we've had the state of social media conversation. Every year, you say TikTok is your favorite. What is it about TikTok that still has you hooked this many years? Because I got off that thing years ago.
For one, I'm personally addicted, right? So I'm biased. I'm admitting up front. You have my full transparency that like I personally love TikTok. I get what I want from that platform. For two, as I said, I think it can serve certain needs in a way that some of the other platforms aren't able to. A lot of them do similar things, but they're just not as efficient with them. They're not as strong. Their algorithm is not as dialed in. TikTok has the best algorithm. Now, when I say best, that's relative, right? It's the best to keep you in that vortex of things that you are looking for, but it's also the best at keeping you on the platform. So it's a double-edged sword, right? If you're somebody who's looking to disconnect from social media, TikTok you would call the worst platform, and I would call the best. So it's a different thing. But in terms of me thinking of it as somebody who works in the industry and thinking of it as in terms of optimizing and being efficient, there I go, I say the word optimizing, and being efficient in terms of what these platforms do, I think TikTok has it the most dialed, and also it is growing massively. It continues to have rapid growth, and it also serves an audience that is the youngest. Snapchat actually might be number one in terms of the youngest, but it's
which is crazy. Like in our generation, Snap's dead. I don't know anyone who uses Snapchat, and when I've heard stats about it being really popular among Gen Z, I'm like, wow, I thought Snapchat would have died.
Kids love Snapchat. Kids also love TikTok. And that younger generation is the most important in terms of, let's start with business perspective, right? If you are somebody who is operating a business, you can acquire customers of all different ages, and you want to acquire customers of all different ages. But if you acquire the youngest customer, that's the customer who's going to be with you for the longest, right? If you acquire the oldest customer, that's the customer who's going to be with you for the least amount of time. So just from a practical business perspective, the younger the audience that you can get in, and we see all levels of business trying to cater to that young demographic, the longer you could potentially have them if you continue to serve them, right? As long as you continue to do right by them, they become customers for life. And we think about some of the products and television and things that we consume. I still love the stuff from my childhood. That's the stuff that I have the largest affinity for. And so if you get in during that time, that's the time that you can make the most headway with your business. So there's that level. But there's also them being the most savvy and likely to pass along those recommendations. As I talked about earlier, maybe the grandchild is the one who's actually saying, hey, we need to go find that spot. Maybe the grandparent is the one who's not necessarily on Yelp or Facebook or TikTok and finding those restaurants and recommending them. You're going to find the people there. And they're also creating content based around that stuff. How many times do we see videos of people, young people on Instagram or TikTok or anywhere else where they're talking about things that are happening, and now you've been filled in by somebody who may not be an expert on the topic, but has a platform and has a voice. And so they are more likely to be driving some of that engagement and that conversion. And so, yeah, you really want to be where the kids are. That is just the nature of the business.
I want to shift over to my favorite platform, Instagram. I have one big overarching question about Instagram that I don't think I've ever asked you, but I'm dying to hear your answer.
Okay.
Is the static photo dead?
No. It seemed like it was going to be last year. When Instagram was all in on Reels, when they were really pushing Reels, it seemed like the slider post, the swipe, the static photos were really going by the wayside. The algorithm has shifted much more significantly back in favor of those, to the point that it's now a combination of the two. They're kind of equal. The Reels have become kind of like a home run situation, where it's like some are going to be lower engagement and some are going to be super high engagement. If it hits the algorithm, if it hits the right spot and gets into that funnel, it will take off, and you'll find the most kind of broad general awareness on those. Whereas with the static posts, the photos, or even the swipes where it's a combination of photo and video, those are not going to go as far. In most cases, they're not going to go quote unquote viral like we kind of seek when we're posting the Reels, but they have found like a more solid foundation and a more solid base. They have returned to prominence in a certain way, and so you can still post those pretty consistently and get engagement on them, especially if you're serving people who are your friends and family, which is kind of where Instagram started, right? It was supposed to be a platform to share photos with your nana. If you are somebody in that sweet spot, you'll still find kind of the engagement. But if your goal is to go viral, the path to that is still with Reels. The path to that is still with video being served to a wider audience, and those tend to hit the top part of the funnel more frequently. We're just simple creatures. Like we see moving video and we click it and we watch it. Like that is how this goes, and so they are aware of that. But I will say I am more bullish on the return to the static photo posts and the slider posts than I was a year ago, where it seemed like if you're not posting a reel, you're wasting time on the platform.
Right. So is there even, for example, an episode I did with Vernon Family Farm, which is a big farm in the area. They host a bunch of events. Should they not even waste their time making a graphic in Canva that says, hey, our event is $20 and it's Saturday from 12 to 8 p.m., or should they just make a video about that instead?
You know what? It doesn't hurt them to do both, right? You make a graphic or you record. What I would say, if I was in their shoes, if I was their social media manager, what I would do is, one, I'd make the graphic, I'd make the post and just try to drive awareness that way. I'd also think about sharing it in a story as opposed to a feed post. Just figure out ways to kind of reach that audience. Maybe you also can now post that on Facebook or X or anywhere else they might have a presence. Then what I would do is create a video from that event. I will create a video at that event that is able to be used as now an advertisement for next year's event. So, or next season's event or next month's event, whatever that be, with truly engaging content, quick movement, something that is really going to keep people's attention, and use that the next time, or use those two things in concert and in combination. Just thinking about ways that if you've posted that graphic 10 times, people are just going to start to be bored of it and tune out and skip over it. They know what that is, right? They go, oh, the festival's coming up. But if you post that video next time and it's like, wow, everybody looks like they're having so much fun at the farm, then now you're creating a new opportunity to even re-engage people that have kind of lost that train and feeling like they've left the station, and also new people who are discovering it, or now they're sharing it and going, look at how much fun these people are having. Let's go to the farm. So figure out ways to like refresh stuff. But I wouldn't move away from like that static post, but maybe that goes to stories instead of feed this time, you know?
On the subject of stories, I personally love Instagram stories. It's my favorite place to share because I know that's going directly to my followers. If I'm posting stuff into Reels, into the algorithm, I start to get a little more insecure. Who's going to see this? People I don't know are going to see this. But if you're following me, it's because you're interested in me and care about me in some way. So I know that's the fastest way to speak to the people that I actually truly care about. So I'm just wondering for you, like, what do you think is the best utilization of Instagram stories? What should you be posting there?
It's exactly that. I would dare say there's a lot of people, especially younger generation, who pretty much exclusively use stories. Like they'll use their feed to kind of plant like a flag and say like, we celebrated, here's some great photos from it as a photo dump, or even like, it's my birthday, it's this event. You want to have some of those memories hard and fast on there. But that transient nature of stories is the same thing we were talking about with Snapchat, and why the kids love it so much is that stuff's gone. You see it when you see it, and then it's gone. And it has a bit of a fleeting nature, an ephemeral nature. And people aren't to exactly what you said, people aren't as concerned about like, who's going to see this. They just throw it up there and then it's gone 24 hours later. So I think stories are best utilized for that, is something that you don't necessarily want to live forever, but you want to get the word out on, especially to your tried and true, especially to your actual tribe and the people that rock with you and follow with you. But the combination of the two is where you get the biggest effect. If you're only using one or the other, you're kind of limited and might be better served on another platform or trying to expand the diet.
From your experience, and this is pretty much across anywhere you're making vertical videos, which is pretty much on all these platforms right now.
Yeah.
So maybe this is just general. What's the best way, or some of the best ways, to capture attention within those? We for years we've been saying 5 seconds, but that might even be too much time. It's first 2 seconds, just to get someone to not scroll immediately past your video and to get them to entertain your thoughts for 2 seconds. What are some of your favorite strategies for trying to stop the scroll?
You're 100% right. It's 2 seconds. Like 5 seconds is not happening. Nobody has the attention span to last 5 seconds into a video to know if they're going to watch it or not, because now they feel like they watched the whole video. You got 2 seconds to get them. And the answers are simple. Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Movement is number one, right? A lot of times, like if you're starting your video on a static image or something that's not really like super engaging visually, people are gone already.
Yeah.
You want to capture them with bright colors, movement. Text has been a major kind of development in recent years, like the captioning of things, and especially the movement of the text within the captioning, not just like plain captioning. That is a simple and easy way to get people to hook in. The other thing you have to consider is most people, like 90% of cases, people are listening without sound because they're on their phone and they're in public and they don't have their headphones in. Most people are listening without sound. And so you want the visual to be something that even without the sound, even without the bass drop or the music or the narration, you want to be making sure that in that first 2 seconds, you're at least grabbing their attention with their eyes. And so it's simple stuff. It really is simple stuff. You want that stuff moving. You want the text on there. You want to make sure that whatever that is happening in that first 2 seconds is enough for them to go, okay, I'll watch the end of this. Even if it's not going to keep them and have them be a return customer, you're at least now putting yourself in best position to have somebody spread that further.
Yeah. That's really interesting what you mentioned, because this has been an observation of mine, and I wanted to bring this up. The text on the screen, and I don't mean in the sense of like, hey, here's my podcast clip, here's the transcribed what we're talking about. What I mean is like, I love writing, and I still, like, on Instagram, I love writing a long caption, something emotional, meaningful to me. And as I'm writing that, I'm always like, is anyone even reading this? Is anyone even getting to this? So I've wondered, should I just move that from the caption of the video to on the video itself? Here's just me throwing the Frisbee in the background or whatever. The video is not the important part of it. It's just something to put behind the text. So where your long caption is actually now on the video itself, which seems to be what a lot of people are doing.
Yeah, if your long caption is matching the narration or matching kind of what's happening, I would suggest like the caption is secondary. In fact, I would say as a baseline rule, the caption is always secondary. The caption is always secondary. Those two things work in concert, but what most people are going to see first is that video or that photo or that thing. And then if they're interested in more, that's when they go to the caption. So you want to hook them with that first. If it's meaningful and if it's something that you really want to like dive deeper into, and it's not something that quite conveys to audio that's going to be heard in that video or text that you're going to display on that video, I think it's still a very viable method to kind of express those thoughts, but you do have to remember that they're getting to that second. So whatever you want them to get to first, that part that you want them to get to first, whether it's the photo, the video, or whatever, you want to hook them there and not necessarily the caption.
The blue check used to mean something completely different than what it does now. I'm sure there's a lot of small business owners who are wondering, should I get verified on Instagram? What do you think? What are the actual benefits of it? And is it worth the cost?
I think it still has meaning. And so if you're going to engage on these platforms, I would get it. It also, a lot of times, especially as it relates to like X and some of these other platforms, you have access to tools that you would not have otherwise, right? That it has shifted from we are verifying that this is a person of note to this is a person who's a paid user of the platform, or in some cases they still do verify based on notoriety. But this is a person who's using the platform in the optimal way, and we encourage others to use it. You're playing the game a bit. You're getting into the whatever Instagram or X or anybody else wants you to do. You're playing the game a little bit, but they are also offering you on the back end access to certain tools that you would not have otherwise. And so the utilization of those tools is great. I think there are huge benefits on X to having that premium subscription from a practical perspective. But it no longer means that this person is somebody who is a newsmaker or a top tier influencer or an actual celebrity or somebody that needs to be verified because there would be copies of that person. Sometimes it's just your next door neighbor, but they've paid for the service. So I think you have to be careful on not to assign the previous intention, the previous version of what you think that check used to mean, but recognizing what the new reality is, and also just gaming the system and utilizing the platform to your advantage. So I think there's still value in utilizing it as long as you're going to take advantage of what it provides.
Where do we stand on the hashtags in the caption of the video? Are the days of 15 hashtags over? Yeah,
hashtags don't really, the algorithms are so sophisticated now. The hashtag used to be the way that you could group content and find these things. There are so much more advanced, like the way that AI and other systems within can read video and know what's going on in that video and understand the audio that's being presented and be able to parse out the words and understand what's being talked about in this video. Those are no longer needed as a method to kind of say, hey, everything about farms is on the farms hashtag. Everything is so locked in terms of that algorithm. They really aren't useful. So yes, gone are the days of needing 50 hashtags to make sure that you're finding the widest audience.
Yeah. I would say my favorite things that I've seen from Instagram in the last probably 2 years, the ability to add a link directly into an Instagram story. I love that. And then also the ability to collaborate with other people. I think that's been huge. I had someone tell me the other day that the speed in which someone accepts your collaboration invitation really matters and can affect just how many people that video or image reaches. Do you agree with that?
I've not heard that. I mean, again, some of these things are things that the platform then tells you directly. Especially if you're somebody in a media industry or have a direct relationship with a rep from some of these platforms. Some of these things are things that you have to, find on your own. If that person is seeing that and experiencing that, I would encourage them to continue to do that. In my experience, I've not seen that. I also think that a lot of people think that because you are collaborating, you're getting like the multiple of what your audience is and what their audience is, and it's all of a sudden going to blow up. If I collaborate with The Rock, that all of a sudden everybody who follows The Rock and gets this is going to see that. In reality, it doesn't work that way, right? Because if I posted something, if I'm the originator of something, it's going to find my audience who follows me, but it's also going to find further audience. Now, how far? Depends on how viral the content goes and how many people share and all those things. The person who is collaborating, it is not being like super served to the multiples of their audience. It is only being served to the people that follow them. So if they're following it in feed and they see it in their feed, they will see it. But that larger group, that opportunity to go viral is not amplified by their reach. It is not X that. It is significant, and the collaboration matters because now all the people who follow both of those feeds will see it in their feed, but how many people in your feed actually engage with every single piece of content you do and follow you are engaged on everything? It's a smaller number, right? And so that's why that amplification, that's why that virality is so important to the sustaining of these platforms. But it is not just a X times X equals Y. It does not work that way.
Now I want to move on to some of the other platforms, but first let's wrap a bow on Instagram and TikTok, which are closely related. And feel free to tailor your answer to either of these platforms. What are the biggest mistakes made on these platforms that you routinely see that as someone who works in social just drives you up a wall, that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you're doing this and think that it's effective?
Utilizing content from other platforms on the platform. Everything you do should be specific to that platform. So if you've got a great video that you've got on other platforms, you either have to adapt it for that platform or come up with a new way to present that idea on the platform. The number one mistake that everybody makes is thinking that social media is universal across the platforms and everything works exactly the same way across all social media. It could not be further from the truth. Everything should be tailored to the platform that you're serving and to the audience on that platform. And so the biggest mistake that I see is just this feeling that social media content is social media content is social media content. It'd be like trying to put radio broadcasts on television. That just won't work. Like, people are looking for visuals on that platform. And so you have to know the platforms and you have to know what the content on those platforms is tailored to. So optimizing content for each individual platform is what I would say is my number one recommendation. Don't just think because you have something that worked on X, it's going to work on TikTok. And especially if you post it in exactly the same way.
Okay, so let's go granular. If you're in Portsmouth here, my favorite coffee shop is called Wild Valentine. They sell coffee and they sell flowers. We love Wild Valentine, great cappuccinos. So they should not be making one video and posting that same video on their TikTok, on their Instagram, and on their Facebook channels. They should be. So they have to create 3 new pieces of content. They cannot post, or they should not post the same video. So what are the subtle changes that they should make to tailor to each platform accordingly?
Yeah, just to be clear, a lot of the content can be the same, right? You can have the same content, but what you have to do is adapt it, right? On X, you're going to want to optimize that space. So a lot of the things on each individual social media platform are optimizing the space. On X, the most real estate that you can take up on any individual post is a 4x5, with 5 being the long. So the ratio, I'm talking ratios now. I'm not talking specific pixels. 4x5. What you want is for it to be the tallest possible thing, so that when somebody's scrolling, your post takes up the most space in the feed. It's a real estate thing.
Okay.
And so on X, a video or even an image is going to be 4x5. Now you can click in it and it'll expand, but you want to optimize for that platform. On TikTok, everything is full bleed. Everything is 9x16. Everything is vertical. On Instagram, in stories, things are vertical. But in feed, it's again 4x5 is the optimal, unless you're posting a reel where you do get a little more real estate. And so you have to know some of these things. You have to try this out and figure out the sizes. Your goal being to optimize the space that you're taking up. But then it goes to, if I post something on X, it might not need captioning on the video because I can put something in the caption and people read more of the captions on X. Think about also just composition. On X, the text is above and the content is below. On Instagram, the content is above and the text is below. So naturally, you'd imagine on X, people are reading captions more and then clicking into things, as opposed to on Instagram, where people are watching content more and reading the caption if they even get to the caption. So you have to adapt these things. You may not need the captioning on X, but on Instagram, if you're serving the video first, you may want to overlay some captioning. You may want to alter how the video happens. You may want to alter how fast you're trying to engage them. This edit of the video that you did on X may not be suitable for Instagram or may not be suitable for TikTok. And so it's not like a recreation. You don't have to make 3 different versions of the same type of content, but you do have to repackage the content. You do have to figure out what's optimal for each individual platform. And so you have to, quite frankly, these days you need a skilled editor. You need somebody who knows these platforms and knows how to create this content. There are exceptions where no matter what somebody posts, they will get engagement, but you have to reach that level before you can start doing that. Otherwise, you really should be optimizing for each platform. And these things are widely out there, by the way. This 4x5 ratio, 9x16, all these things are available if you look. What's the optimized sizing for each individual platform? But the main goal to take away is you want to have the most real estate on somebody's screen. When they're scrolling on their phone, you want to take up more of their screen than less.
And to your point, when any young kids come to me, or even when friends who are looking for work or whatever, I just say, and maybe I'm biased, but learn some behind the scenes content creation, editing video, editing audio. Every business needs to be on these platforms in some way, on social media in some way. And a lot of people who are running businesses, especially in this area, might be older, and a lot of them have no interest in going near TikTok, and they would rather just hire someone who's young and hungry and cheap to figure it out. So it's an incredible skill set to have in this day and age.
Totally is. And another thing I was going to say is another tip, don't overproduce. Sometimes just recording like really good video behind the scenes is just as good as that video that you paid somebody a few $100s to edit and put together and compose and put music to. That one might go further. The one you just recorded off your phone behind the scenes, I can't tell you how much like TikTok content I consume that's just like somebody doing a day in the life type stuff. Yeah. Now, it's not like here's my day from start to finish, but just like a moment between people in the back of a restaurant in the kitchen, or a moment where the barista is talking to somebody. Like, there is just so much opportunity for content if it's something that people are going to identify with and engage with, but don't overproduce all the time. Like, not everything has to be this fully finished, fully formed thing. A lot of times it's about that consistency and just making sure that people are getting a snapshot into what you're doing. There's platforms that I would say are even tailored to some of that. And I imagine we can speak about that, but LinkedIn is one that I think of a lot in terms of people want to hear from experts. People want to hear from people who are in those roles and in those positions.
So that actually brings up something I wanted to ask you, the quality. I think a lot of people get in their heads about, all right, I need to get the right camera. I need to get the right little handheld microphone thing that you see. How much does the quality, the look, the feel, the lighting, how much of that actually matters these days?
It helps, right? Because as we were talking about, you want to get people visually engaged. So if somebody sees something that's a higher quality than a lower, our brains just naturally gravitate toward that. But it is not the be all end all. It's about the content. It's about what you're serving them. And so overproducing is definitely something that can lead you down the wrong path. Because what happens inevitably is you're now spending all that time and energy and effort into making this thing that you feel like is perfect. And then when it doesn't hit, now you've wasted all that time, effort, energy, and you feel like you failed. As I said earlier, you feel like you didn't accomplish the goal, when maybe if you had posted something that was super raw, super unfiltered, people would have responded to it more. The younger generation is gravitating more toward lo-fi, raw, behind the scenes, genuine, true, authentic stuff, as opposed to the overproduced, overpackaged, trying to hack their brain with commercial advertising thing. And so overproduction can be a real pitfall.
Yeah. Okay, you've mentioned X a bunch. This is a platform you spend a lot of time on, and I can tell you're chomping at the bit to talk about it. In the context of small businesses, should they be on X, especially given all of the changes that you've spoken to? Is this something where they should really find success, or is it something they should not waste their time on given strapped resources? Where
I would say X is best utilized in the case of a small business or anybody is if you have a really distinct like voice. If you have a voice that you feel what people will identify with, if you're witty, if you're quippy, if you can, in the written medium, figure out ways to get your content noticed. Now, don't get me wrong, video, photo is still the driver of that platform. But as I said, most people will give more of a look to the X caption and then the content, as opposed to other platforms where the visual content leads. Again, especially just pay attention to the layout. Instagram is content, caption. Twitter is caption, content. And so think about that as you're developing things. But if you have a witty voice, if you have something that you feel like people can identify with, it's also the easiest to kind of just like see threads of replies and things like that. You can also create a thread, right? As opposed to your long caption on Instagram, you might be able to have a multiple X post thread that people can follow along with. If you have that kind of capability, that's still a great platform. It's still very widely used. It's still somewhere that I think has value, but I would probably wonder, if you don't, what you're getting out of it, right? If that, and also again, go where your audience is. If you find that the people that come into your shop or wherever you are mostly use X, be on X. Find out. Do a survey. Do a survey of people who are coming in and your audience. What social media platforms do they use, and serve them exactly where they are. So I don't think it's like as easy as use or don't use X in those scenarios, but do think about like what you're getting from it and what you're providing to people from it. That platform tends to be better for people who are like in the witty like space and people who can kind of come up with a good caption and make people hooked on the caption, as opposed to where the video is leading.
Right. Also, to my point earlier about on Instagram, I like to write longer things. On X, that longer thing is the feature. So in addition to witty, it could also be something thought-provoking and something just like deeply interesting as well that could also grab people's attention. So if you're a good writer, if you fancy yourself a good writer at one of these small businesses, that could be the place for you.
Text still plays significantly more on X and LinkedIn than it does on the other sites.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that to me before we started talking that, and this has really been a very recent change, so this is relevant. X, in the wake of the election, the run-up and the post, and Elon Musk at the top of it, now in Trump's cabinet or cabinet adjacent, has become more right-leaning, and there's kind of a left-leaning exodus from X. They're going to Blue Sky. What is Blue Sky?
Yeah. So Blue Sky is a similar platform to X in terms of text with rich visuals, photos, videos, not dissimilar to Threads, which also popped up. There are many people in the wake of Elon Musk purchasing X who went, there should be an alternative to this. There should be another version of this for people who are against his politics or against his leaning, or against kind of the things that he stands for in terms of the social media platform itself and what he wants that platform to be, for a place for them to go. I would say that in recent years, it hasn't necessarily been that the platform itself is right-leaning, right? Like, because the platform is the people. The people on the platform form what these things are. But it seems like some of the voices that are being promoted, some of the voices that are being elevated are different than what somebody who wants their experience to be a little more balanced or even left-leaning is looking for. They are feeling like they're not able to find that content in the way that they did previously. I would say that is what is sparking this kind of exodus or I say exodus, but if I'm being honest, I feel like a lot of people are hedging their bets and going, you can find me over at Blue Sky, but I'm still on this app until something happens. And then they're on the app and then they're not really like doing it. They're kind of hedging the bet. And so that tends to be a place though, where it seems like you can get back to the original experience of algorithm social media of, if I follow these people, this is the content I see, and not being super served things that are in the algorithm and you may not necessarily want in your feed. And so there's a lot of people who I imagine, especially let's say somebody who's left leaning and might be looking for things that are more aligned with their needs, but they also are looking at all this right-wing stuff that is going to continue to be served to them because they are engaging with this content and seeing these things. And so they can't kind of escape that, right? And again, this is not like an endorsement of either side of or whatever, but this is just the trends that are developing and why people are shifting kind of their perspective on these platforms.
I remember 2 years ago when we did our state of social media conversation, it was very shortly after the Elon Musk, maybe the purchase has just gone through or just been floated out there.
Yeah, just happened.
And everyone and their mother was screaming, oh, this is the end of Twitter. Twitter's dead. People were fleeing the company left and right. There was all sorts of turmoil. Why didn't Twitter die? Why did none of those things happen?
Because they're liars. Everybody who says they're leaving the platform did not leave the platform. That's the problem. And new users who were looking for the experience that Twitter was offering started joining up. And so Twitter was never going to die. Now, was Twitter a good business decision by Elon Musk? That is a question that has some answers that might be different from was Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter the end of Twitter? It was never going to be. There are too many people who built up their entire reputations and their social media and feeling like their clout and their value came from those social media platforms, which is something we've talked about before as being extremely dangerous, like finding your self-worth through these platforms. But they have followers that they don't want to lose that aren't necessarily going to follow them on Blue Sky. And now they have to build this whole new thing up. A lot of them just lied. They were not leaving the platform. They remained on the platform. And even the people who are still now going to other platforms are kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Right. But Twitter also, and I mean, we only see perhaps just the big headlines, big negative headlines these days, but a lot of advertisers pulled out and said, no, we're done doing business with Twitter. So
initially there were a ton of advertisers who did that. Then as the platform kind of matured and they saw what the nature of it was, some of them came back. And then in fact, a lot of them have recently kind of reestablished those connections. And now Twitter also instituted monetization for creators, right? Based on your engagement on the platform. And so now there's people who are actually making like genuine money on X.
Yeah.
And there's content being produced first and foremost on X. There's a whole, this is an evolving ecosystem, and X continues to kind of be one that is undergoing more changes than most, right? The other platforms are kind of where they are and established. And Twitter, before it was X, was like those. It felt fully matured and they were just kind of in the same space that they were, but they weren't super profitable. Elon Musk has turned it into more of a business, and now it's interesting to see if it will ultimately be a successful business, and if he even cares about that. Ultimately, if he was able to influence an election, does it really matter if it's a successful business? He may have only had that goal in mind. And so it's a very fascinating story, and something that kind of like continues to develop, because there are many advertisers that I imagine are looking for exactly what's happening on X and returning to that platform in that way. And so we will see what ultimately the financial implications of this are.
Now, I don't consume anything on X or spend any time there because it's not good for my mental health. Instagram is really the only place I consume anything, just because I like to limit my time on social media. I've heard that there's things happening on X now where full podcasts are going up, when for some reason Rogan's episode with Trump was having some problems being watched on YouTube, and so then they talked to Elon and they got the full thing on X as well that you could watch. Now this is happening with things outside of Rogan as well. So Twitter is now X is now making a push into, you can watch YouTube style videos at full length on X, right?
You can watch, there is no time limit anymore. You can watch full YouTube length or any other platform length videos. In addition to that, there are partnerships with people to create content for the platform as well. And so, yeah, it is like
Tucker Carlson has a partnership with them, right?
It is a full scale media network or platform for people to be able to produce that type of content. And so gone are the days of everything needing to be bite-sized. Gone are the 140 character limits. This platform is completely different from that platform if you haven't been on it in a while.
Okay, let's go over to Facebook Meta. This is really interesting for the Seacoast specifically, because there's a lot of people who are still putting a lot of their time on Meta. What do you think are the best ways to utilize? The company is Meta. The platform is still Facebook, right? That's right. Yeah. Meta is the overarching company that controls Instagram and Facebook. Yes, and WhatsApp and several other things. Yes, and many other things. Yeah. So Threads. Yes. Facebook. Best strategies for standing out on Facebook. If you're a small business, if you're a yoga studio here, there's so many like wellness places, salons, massages, things of that nature, coffee shops, restaurants. Facebook, utilizing that. What are your best tips and tricks for standing out on Facebook? Yeah, unlike X, which underwent tons of changes, Facebook has really remained almost nearly unchanged since we started using it. Now, granted, very, very beginning, it was just to connect people in different colleges and get them to see each other. But it remains mostly unchanged. It's still a platform for you to be able to talk to your friends and family in your direct network. It's still a platform for you to be able to join groups and interact with people that way. There are tons of like mommy groups and things like that my wife is on. I also utilize Marketplace. Personally, yes. I use a lot of stuff on Marketplace, whether it be selling or buying. It still really is a way for people to connect in local communities. It has remained that to a high degree. And so I would imagine if you are a local business, Facebook is a great place for you to be. You have a page that represents your business. People can talk on it. People can leave comments. You can actually serve your community by posting on it. You can let people know directly about events. People who are on that platform can share it directly with their friends and family in a very easy way through the messaging service. So I would say, what if you are trying to specifically hone in on local business, Facebook is a great place to do it, and you don't really have to do anything different than what you've already kind of been doing. And if you haven't been doing anything, it's just about getting active there. Create your page for your business. Start posting content to it. The way that it will then spread globally and nationally is through that same thing, right? You're posting videos that then go viral. But
if those people are not coming to visit you at your local business, they're not really the audience you're after anyway, and not necessarily somebody that you should be focusing in your attention on serving. And so just continue to serve your local communities through making info and content that is relevant for them, and hoping that the people who share it with their friends and family also in the local community are spreading it wider. And so Facebook for local is still one of the best. There really isn't like a replacement for it. There's other platforms that do similar things in terms of Yelp, right? Specifically for restaurants and other smaller businesses. They're small businesses, but it's primarily a food platform, is Yelp, and Google, who has their own like ratings and comment system, but nothing feels quite as much of being in the house with your friends and family as Facebook still continues to. So I think Facebook's a great platform, especially for local business.
When you go to post on Instagram, you're always prodded with, do you want to post this post and reel and story directly to your Facebook? So it's an exact copycat. Is that something you should do? Or like to your point earlier, tailor make each thing to each platform?
Those two platforms are the closest related because they have similar things, right? Facebook used to not have stories. Now they have stories. And so the stories that are on Facebook are very similar to the stories that are on Instagram. If you port stuff over, it has a similar thing. I would say in most scenarios, you can do that. Most scenarios, you can just port that content over between Instagram and Facebook. But what you have to be careful of is again, who is the audience that's engaging with your content? If you're a local business who has a really, really strong Facebook audience, and you have tons of people always interacting and you're posting about your events and everybody registers and signs up through Facebook, but your Instagram is more tailored to like a national audience and being like, hey, here's this business that's happening in the middle of this town and it's fantastic and we have this great engaging content, and those two things are different, you should not be posting the same things at the same time to those platforms. You should be tailoring it. If they are both kind of like funnels for just spreading awareness in a local community, you can do that. But realistically, I would imagine that your Facebook's probably doing that better than your Instagram is. And then it doesn't necessarily make sense to like cross post that way. But if it's a time and resource thing and they are serving similar communities, but maybe a little bit different, the people who follow you on Instagram don't follow you on Facebook, then you can cross post. It's not a big thing. It's not a big deal. But again, always remember who are the people that are engaging with your content on those platforms and tailor it to them.
Okay, so very comforting to hear that if you're a small business, Facebook actually may be your 1,000 followers on Facebook as compared to your 1,000 followers on TikTok and Instagram may be like a stronger indication or something that you should care about more, Absolutely, because you're also, unlike with X I was talking about, those are real people most of the time. There are bots on Facebook, but most of the time that's somebody with a profile who's sitting somewhere. And that's why Marketplace can exist, right? Because a lot of the scammers and bots and things have kind of been called out, and you really are dealing with, I have a bike I need to sell. You live 3 blocks away. You live 3 miles away. Let's figure out how to connect. And so Facebook still is a platform where that connection is happening. And then I should have led with this off rip. Facebook is still the biggest platform. Facebook is still the platform with the most users, and I don't think anybody's going to ever pass them. And so you really are hitting the most people. And if you're local, probably the most genuine people as well, the most authentic people. Okay, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So we have one final platform, and it's LinkedIn, which when we're talking about small business, I mean, this is the business platform, the professional platform. And I think, in my guess, it's probably the least easily understood platform, or the one that people just know the least about, aren't properly informed, don't know how to use it correctly. I know I certainly fall in that category. I've posted stuff on LinkedIn intermittently throughout the years, just doing it with the premise of, this is the platform where this video, this written post could just end up in someone's feed who they have no idea who I am, but I might get a random DM from them that may actually lead to some kind of tangible work opportunity or networking opportunity. And that has happened. That has happened to me more so on LinkedIn than any other platform. So that's kind of my reason for still posting there. Even if the engagement isn't crazy, I still consider it worth my time because you never know who's going to see that post.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's exactly how the platform operates, right? It is not the platform for virality. It is not the platform for like, I'm just seeking engagement for the sake of awareness and I want to get the most engagement and then everybody's going to come flooding to me. It is for a very specific purpose, which is networking. It is that connection between different people. It is that, okay, this person has posted this thing. I identify with that. Maybe there's actually something that we can do together, the collaboration, the partnership, the job offer, whatever that is. It really is more of a platform where it's like, instead of looking at all the cool things I'm interested in, it's more about, look at all the cool things I can do. And can you do the other cool things? And can we collaborate? Can we connect on doing those cool things? And so I would say, unlike most of the other platforms where I'm like, you want to just post the most engaging thing, you want to post the thing that's going to get the most attention, and you're going to want the thing that's going to get their attention in 3 seconds, and you have to see it on the video. That's a platform where you can kind of lay out a little bit more, where you can really like express ideas. I would also say it's much more of a platform that's not about, again, lifestyle, awareness, content, behind the scenes. It's really about founder-led stuff. What you want to be doing on Facebook, especially if you're a small business, is maybe interview series with your founder, or tips that your founder has on LinkedIn, tips that your founder has about how to successfully run a business, or a request for help with certain things, and soliciting feedback and ideas from other business owners who have that. It really is about that genuine interaction between people who are in the workspace and have ideas that could either be shared with others or are solicited by them to figure out how to optimize their business. And so that's a really, really like true like conversational platform, and a place that people engage in a way that is beyond just like the clickbaity, content driven platform. To your point, you may not be reaching as big an audience, but you're going to get 3 replies about business opportunities, as opposed to those platforms where you're never going to get any, and it's really just a like and a share. And so that genuine interaction between people who are in the business is what that platform is for. And I would say, lead with founder content. People want to see the actual people that are running the business. It's not a platform where it's about like, I have this business. It's more about, these are the struggles that I have with this business. These are the lessons that I've learned from business. Here are lessons that I can share about the business. You want to lead with your founder. And so if you are somebody who's a small business, put that person, if it's not that person, make sure it's somebody in the actual like C-suite, somewhere where you can make sure that they have actual tangible knowledge of the business and hands on the business, and talk to them. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe there is a series where you could go through like, hey, I'm the line cook, or I'm the waitress, or I'm the barista, or I'm the bartender. That could be potentially interesting, and it might have its own lessons. But what people are really looking for is expertise there. Like, I'm an expert in this, and here's how I can get business done better.
And it feels the least conducive to doom scrolling, at least in my own personal LinkedIn consumption. I'm not really like scrolling, trying to consume as much content as possible and stop on the thing. Like, I kind of glance through it all. I click on the captions. I read, I watch some of the video. That feels like the one where, like you said, you don't have to try to game the system and capture those first 2 seconds of attention.
Yeah, there's an expectation when you log onto LinkedIn that like, this is a business professional and not just some dude in a basement in Bumble F, somewhere, who's just trying to really like get your attention, but not give you something genuine back. And be that unfulfilling, unrewarding experience of doom scrolling. It is the furthest from that on LinkedIn. I feel like LinkedIn is the most people who are really trying to share messages and try to do good and try to have people understand more about themselves, and then wider their own businesses and figure out things, and also genuinely connect. Like, hey, I'm doing this thing, you're doing this thing. I saw that you're doing it. Let's collaborate. Let's figure out a way to do something together, and we can do business. So yeah, that doom scrolling, I don't think really happens on that platform, because it tends to be like real people with real ideas talking about business.
Well, Eric, you are a absolute wealth of information on all things social media. You will always be my go-to guy for this subject. I just want to ask you one question, because I think I kind of ask you this every year, because when I do social media work for my actual job, I low-key kind of hate my life. Like, I've never really enjoyed doing social media stuff. A lot of us in media, or who have a product or something to sell, advertise, call it the necessary evil. Like we said, you just kind of have to do it, even if you don't want to, even if it doesn't necessarily align with where you want to spend your time. You just have to do it. And so I'm just always fascinated by people who work in social media and just how happy they are as individuals. You've been in social media for a while now. And I mean, you've been working in social media for ESPN, for Vox, and now in affiliation with Yahoo for a number of years. Yeah. Why do you still like this?
I don't use it as much in my personal life as I do in business. And not because I feel like I am very good, and not everybody is. I am very good about not taking to heart the things that I see on a lot of social media. I see it more as data because I think of it in a way that's like, oh, this serves my job, and how does it serve my job? I don't really internalize a lot of the stuff that I see. I'm able to I'm a public figure in a certain sense. Like, as you said, I host a show and I produce a show and I go on camera and people react to me. I'm pretty good about just not really taking a lot of that stuff to heart and not internalizing it. So I'm able to operate on these platforms in a way that maybe somebody who isn't, right? Not everybody's wired the same way. Some people take that feedback a little more critically. And so they may not be able to do that, but I am able to do that. And so I don't have this feeling that I need to get off the platforms. Again, now I have somebody I work with named Ariel Hawani, who is an extremely public figure, right? He was just in the middle of the ring with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson on Netflix, broadcast to hundreds of millions of people. And so you can imagine the heinous stuff that he potentially sees on an everyday basis and how hard that might be to deal with. I'm dealing it at a very low level, and I'm at a place where I can still handle that. I can still not internalize kind of what I'm seeing there. There's some people who, even if 2 people follow them and one of those 2 people tells them to F themselves, that they're going to take it to heart and it's going to ruin their day. For those people, I say get off social media. Do not use it. If you have to use it for business or figuring out some way to promote what you're doing, post it and leave it. Don't look at the feedback. Don't do those things unless you absolutely need to. And so it's really it's a personal threshold thing. It's like, how much can you handle this? How much can you not internalize what's happening here? How much do you want to actually consume what's happening here? Not all the info that we're seeing is good info. And this is where it goes back to when we were talking about the proliferation of podcasts and the difference of the medium is sometimes you're just getting served stuff that's not accurate, or sometimes you're getting served stuff that's not helpful to you. And sometimes you're getting served stuff that's going to hurt your personal well-being. And so you have to read that. You have to be attuned to that and read that. And so if this is a feeling like you need to get off those platforms, you should. And you have said there's times where you just get off the platforms and you feel better about it. That is what I would recommend to everybody who's doing it. I personally am able to kind of exist on these platforms and don't really feel the downside of it. If that ever changes, I'm going to take note of it and I'm going to figure out a way to tailor my habits. But I will also admit, I don't post a lot. I really don't. And when I was
you're a lurker.
I'm more of a lurker. And when I was coming up with social media, when I first started, I was like, why do all these people who are social media managers not post on their personal social? Isn't that the best business card for, hey, I do social media? What I came to learn is you're spending so much time and energy on these other accounts, and you really don't want to be on social media now that your job is over, that's what you're going to tend to see. These people who actually do social media professionally don't even use social media personally.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat because I work in sports. I produce NFL podcasts at Spotify. I don't watch a lick of NFL football. I could not be bothered. I live in the Stone Age. I find out that a trade happened 3 days after it happened.
Yeah, when somebody's hosting a show that you're producing and they say,
oh, that happened? Well, Eric, we have one final question. And we ask the same final question every week at the end of every episode. And I'll ask it to you. What is the mission that you are on in your life at this very moment?
It's super simple, and it's been my mission for now, as of yesterday, 7 years, because my daughter turned 7 years old yesterday. It is to be the best possible father that I can be. That is the only mission that I have. That's the only thing I care about. Everything else is in service to that. My job, I'm super happy. I'm super fulfilled. As you said, we just started a new venture. But all of that is to elevate myself and continue to gain and be able to provide more opportunities for my kids. I care about nothing else more. And the only thing that I care about, that I'm focused on, everything else is a satellite around and everything else is in service to, is to being the best possible father that I can be to my 3 kids, Avery, Cecilia, and Logan.
Well, that may be the best answer to the final question that we've ever heard. And I'm not surprised by it one bit. I know what a family man you are and just how much it means to you. And Eric, I don't think I said this in my intro, but you are probably my favorite person I've ever worked with. I loved our time working together, and I love when I get to have you on the show. That's why you're the most frequent guest. I value you very much, not only the knowledge that you have, but just your friendship, your mentorship. You've always been there. You've always been willing to get on the phone to stop and chat. Something I'm going through. So I look up to you. You're a role model, and I'm so proud of you and happy for you in this new venture. And I know you guys are going to absolutely crush it. And I can't wait to watch it for years to come. So thank you for all of that, and thank you for joining me today.
I really appreciate it. The feeling is mutual. I'm so happy and proud for you for always like finding your lane and discovering what you're into and learning about yourself in a way that like I really don't. Like I don't have as many points in my life where I kind of like had to like reset and reassess myself. I've kind of just been like on this one-way track, and it's worked for me. Don't get me wrong. I'm very happy but I just keep like pushing in the same direction, and it's been serving me. But I really like from the outside, I'm always like, man, Troy really like knows himself in a way that I'm not sure I do. And I'm happy that you do, and I'm proud of you. And everything that you do is kind of feels like opposite of what I'm doing, and something that I try to learn from as well. So you're the man, and I always love chatting with you. And thank you for inviting me.